Hey, everybody. Welcome. I know. Don't shoot me, everybody. Don't abandon me yet. I know we had a live broadcast on Monday night. Last night it was complicated. And tonight I'm doing the podcast version because I just have to talk to you. But bear with me. Bear with me. I was talking to my producer and he was like, "This is the longest transition ever," and it is. It's because we really didn't plan on moving to Atlanta. It wasn't something that we planned to do. It in advance to do, but we ended up doing it, and so we're just still making some minor adjustments. But I will tell you this: I enjoyed on Monday. We had live callers. Noah Changa joined me. We had a great time talking about the debate. Yep. So we're super excited. One thing we're considering doing, and I'm just floating this right now, is considering moving the show to 8 o'clock live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So just like when I said consider, I mean we're totally floating it. Wouldn't mind hearing your feedback. How does that work for your schedule? People on the West Coast that are listening, we're going to get back to a stable flow of live content very, very soon. We probably are going to have a live show tomorrow night. So, just so you know, it's going to be we're in the zone. We're in the zone, and we're almost ready to go full time. If you have not seen our content, I'm laughing. One of our viewers, one of our regular supporters and viewers, he's been watching this for a long time. He made me crack up laughing. He said, Ben, you work with a bunch of neoliberals and Russia-phobes, or not Russia-phobes, how do you describe it? People who Russia, talking about who I work with during the day. And I busted out laughing because, it's kind of true. If you watched the content that we shared yesterday, you saw on the panel at Content News, I was debating, or not really a debate, but had a little discussion with one of the guys who works with us, who's a contributor there, contributor, and he believes in the fair tax, which is apropos considering Donald Trump's talking about his tax policy today, and we'll get into that obviously. But one of the guys I work with, he believes in the fair tax, and then most people there believe more in the Russia. And when I say believe, I don't mean it as a statement of faith. I mean believe in the Russia conspiracy. I don't believe it. I don't think that it is a statement of faith for people to believe it. I think some people are not as skeptical. So that's what I can say. I will say that I've been very skeptical of the Russia narrative, mainly because I wanted to see evidence, and now I've seen evidence, right? But anyway, that's besides the point. I'm getting all off topic. The point is, one of my listeners made me crack my ass up and laugh. I mean, this morning at work, I'm laughing because he's like, "Man, I feel sorry for you, Ben." But here's the thing. Here's the moral of the story. Like, one thing that we all have in common in the offices where I work, and I think this is true for people who are not Republican. And I say it like that because it's important to realize that there's such a broad spectrum. We can't even really say progressive and liberal anymore, because there's variations. There's progressives, and then you have even further progressives. Then you have the leftists, you have communists, you have socialists. We can't just, I think we have to get out of the bucketing of the large buckets, because there's really a finely, actually, let me restart that. There is a very granular division on the left in which people are falling into very segmented buckets. I don't see it necessarily as a bad thing. I see it good in the sense that people can clearly identify what they believe and what they stand for on economic issues and on social issues. For the most part, we all agree on social issues, but on economic issues, we're night and day. And I'm giving all of this distinction to finish my one point, which is, those of us who are not Republican, there's a broad spectrum, but we can all agree that the tax policy that Donald Trump is trying to implement is something that we all should fight, right? And I'm setting this up to explain why, the comment from our listener today was so funny, but it was salient. It was important, and I think it's worth highlighting before I even go into a discussion. There's a broad spectrum of people who are not Republican. We're not all Democrats. We're not all Green Party. We're not all independents. We're not all neoliberals. We're not all progressives. We're not all communists. We're not all socialists. But the one thing that we have in common is that we're not Republican. And it's not to say that that's just a freaking label. Oh, we're not Republicans, so we're better. We're better because we're not going to try to actually hurt people. You might have neoliberals who aren't going to do anything actively to help people. And we can argue about the nefarious nature of that in great details. But clearly, we're not going to try to implement the Graham-Cassidy bill where we're literally going to put millions more people off of the insurance rolls up to the point where 43,000 people will die every year. We're not literally out there advocating for policies, telling everybody that it's good when in reality it's going to kill some of the same people we're telling it's good. Right. So that's what I say when I say we're not Republican. I'm not saying it as, hey, we're not Republican, we're Democrat. No, it's not a red blue thing. It's not a team thing. It's saying over here on our side, we have great divisions. But the one thing I think we can all agree on is that we don't need to be giving tax breaks to billionaires. Right. So that's the and it's a sad state of affairs that we can only identify our commonalities based on how crazy we aren't. We're the only thing we on the left and the broader left, when I'm talking about people, the only way I can even identify it is to say we're not Republicans. And again, I don't think that segmentation is necessarily a bad thing, because at least we know who we are. At least, my neoliberal friends, they know who they are, right? The people I work with, they know they're neoliberals. And the reason, not all of them, right? I mean, I'm not the only socialist there, thankfully. But here's the point. I went through all of that, and I probably could have said this in about 2 minutes versus 10. Here's the point. Where we are able to work together with people who are not going to betray us on social issues, who are not going to sell us out to Nazis, who are not going to sell us out to white supremacists, right? Where we can work together, we have to, because it's us against people who want to destroy the planet. They want to gut the coffers. They want to, Donald Trump's tax plan today, $5 trillion that they're going to take out of the revenues over the next decade. You know what that's going to do? That it's absolutely going to take away from every single program that we would ever imagine about doing, right? That's going to kill Medicare for all. That's going to kill that's everything that we would possibly, every safety net, Social Security. It's going to kill, because what's going to happen is after Republicans pass that legislation, right? They're going to use it as an excuse to say, oh, see, look, our deficits are going to go up. Our deficits have increased over the last decade. So now we have to cut Medicare. We have to cut Medicaid. So they're going to create the problem, and then they're going to come back 5 years from now, halfway through the problem that they created, and they're going to try to give us a solution, which is going to be to gut every social safety net that was ever created in the United States of America, right? So we have some issues that greatly divide those of us who are not Republicans, but damn it, we're not Republicans. And that actually means something. That's not a platitude. There is a conversation to be had about people who say unite blue no matter who, right? And what am I saying? We've had those conversations. We've gone into great detail about how problematic that oversimplification of our politics is, that red versus blue. But can we pause for a minute and think about how insanely twisted the minds of so many Americans really are? And I'm not going for dramatic effect here. I actually need you to pause and think about Roy Moore in Alabama, a man who believes that homosexuality, it's not enough that he just believes that it's a sin. Okay, hey, there's a lot of people who believe that. That's their religion. This dude believes that homosexuality should be illegal. And last night, Republicans in Alabama gave him the nod to become the nominee for Senate. They're getting ready to replace Jeff Sessions. So for all intents and purposes, they're getting ready to send a man to the Senate who believes that homosexuality should be illegal. And this is who the Republican Party in Alabama believes is the best person for them to elect, right? This is not somebody that they see as, oh, we'll put up with him, oh, we'll tolerate him. This is someone they feel it is a virtue for them to elect. And so you have to take a step back for a minute and be like, okay, yeah, I work with, I think my situation is actually a microcosm of what needs to happen in the United States. I don't agree with all the politics of the people I work with in my office during the day. I mean, it actually would be boring if I did. Let me take a sidebar, right? I'm going to get back to my main point about the problems with the Republicans. But you know what? Who wants to hear people agree with them all day long? And at this point, I'm not talking about politics. I'm not talking about policy. I'm shifting gears here. So kind of get a palate cleanser and refresh your mind for a second, because I'm totally shifting gears to in terms of good conversations, debates, and creativity. Who actually wants to hear people say, "Yeah, I agree with you" all day long? I don't. My most favorite conversation, yeah, I'll deal with it. I'm so tired right now, guys. You don't even understand. My brain's not functioning properly, but it's okay. The best conversation that we've had at Content.News was the one that we had yesterday between me and a guy who is a libertarian economically. He won't admit it. He doesn't want to admit he's libertarian economically, but he wants to get rid of the Fed. He wants to have a fair tax, which is basically just a flat tax, a consumption tax, all this kind of stuff. And he feels like, he believes that it's going to increase the tax revenues, so we could do more for poor people, blah, 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 blah. And, it was a good conversation because we actually were able to debate some of the nuances very quickly. We didn't have a lot of time, but we debated some of the nuances and the differences, and we were able to expose for the audience what's different between our two worldviews. And that says something, right? So people complain often about how, bear with me. People complain often, and I've complained about it, about how stupid, and I don't have a better word right now, but how completely ignorant CNN gets sometimes. Because they're always trying to make sure they have two opposing views and people argue and it's because it's good for ratings. Yeah, it's good for ratings, but you know what else it is also good for? For people who are actually trying to find the differences. I mean, damn it, if you can't turn on CNN and see the differences between two people or two ideologies, I don't know where you could find it on mainstream television. You can't. And this is not saying CNN is something that you should watch, right? Most people should boycott CNN because of how ridiculous it gets and how empty some of the conversations are. But you go to Fox News and everybody is just like one big circle jerk of agreeing with each other. They rarely bring on somebody they disagree with. You go to MSNBC, I think for the first time I saw somebody who on MSNBC via a clip on the internet, because I don't watch it on TV, who actually disagree with one of the hosts. And I'm like, it's a value add to have people who disagree with you. All right, now that's only in terms of debate, in terms of discussion, and but in terms of actually dealing with people who want to destroy everything that we've built progressive in the United States, I'm not interested in giving them the time of day. That's the difference. I'm not interested in giving them the time of day in terms of a policy, in terms of elections, in terms of giving them power, right? And so, yeah, someone can make the argument, and I know someone in the audience is going to make the argument because my audience is very robust. They're going to say, yeah, Ben, but if you give them voice on your platform, if you debate them, then you're giving them voice and you're going to actually help them get elected. I don't know if I agree with that in this context, but that's neither here nor there. And if you're keeping up with me right about now, you are a brilliant person. If you followed everything I said, because I've taken every tangent and I've gone down every tangent. If you're with me and you're not like, what the hell is he talking about? You probably are smarter than me. All right. Coming full circle to what I was laughing at this morning. He was laughing. He made the comment. One of our listeners made the comment and said, Ben, man, I feel bad for you because you have to work with neoliberals and Russophobes, I think is the word he used. And you know what? The reality of it is when you consider who we are opposing, people who want to drop the corporate tax rate down to 15% and then give them room to even get a lower effective tax rate. When you talk about people who want to do away with the estate tax, when we should be increasing the estate tax, because the estate tax only affects about 0.2% of the entire damn population. Right. But they want to get rid of that at the expense of all the people, at the expense of the rest of us, because they're going to increase the lowest bracket from 10% to 12%. Right. So you think about the things that they want to do on tax policy. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to have to work with some neoliberals here while we take that down. It's very similar to Bernie Sanders on Monday in that debate. He defended the Affordable Care Act, and he defended the Affordable Care Act against something that's much worse. But that never stopped him from pushing and calling for Medicare for all. And I think that's a very simple solution that it's taking us some time to actually implement, because there are a lot of people who are still litigating the primaries. A lot of people, who are still reliving it and arguing that same thing over and over again, to the point I mean, a lot of people I'm friends with on Twitter, I have you on mute. Because all you want to do is talk about relitigated primaries. Fine. Maybe that's where you're called to be and to do your work. But in reality, we've got to do both. And I feel like a broken record, because I feel like I've had to say this so many times. But in that where I work is in so much as where I work is a microcosm of what's happening in the United States and what needs to happen. We are going to have socialists like myself work with neoliberals. Doesn't mean we're going to agree on economic policies as we get down to the nitty gritty of it. But you know what we can agree on? We have to stop Donald Trump's tax plan from getting implemented. We absolutely, and it's actually, to be more precise, Paul Ryan's tax plan from being implemented. Here's the deal. We can argue, we can have a bloodbath, rhetorically speaking, when it comes down to how progressive the tax code should be. We can argue between neoliberals and progressives. We can have a rhetorical bloodbath when it comes down to how we implement Medicare for all. Right? We can do that. But what we also realize what we have to do, we 100% have to stand side by side and say, hey, we may not agree that the top tier, the top bracket should be 75%, but you know what we all can agree on? It shouldn't be 32%. We can agree on that. And so let's hold the line and stop Donald Trump. I think there's a slogan going around, not 1 cent for the top 1%, because this tax policy from Donald Trump is a handout. There's no other way to describe it. It's a handout to himself. Here's the other thing I think it's funny. How the entire bloody hell do they expect us to sign on to Donald Trump endorsing a tax reform when we haven't seen his taxes? Yeah, that because we have no framework through which we can understand how this specific tax form will specifically, hate to use the same word, but how this tax reform will specifically help Donald Trump. We have no idea. This tax reform could be a direct handout to him in ways that we can't even imagine, because we've never seen his tax returns. So before he signs this, first we have to stop it from getting to his desk. But somebody needs to point this out. You know, we're not going to just sit by and say, hey, the president can literally be working with Republicans on a tax reform plan, and they're calling it reform. We'll talk about why that's a misnomer, but a tax reform plan that gives him a windfall. I mean, we can almost safely assume that is the case because of his income, because of his wealth, his net worth. We can almost assume that is the case. And so coming back just to be redundant and drive one specific point home again, where I'm not going to agree all day. We might be in for some fireworks on content.news because I don't agree with them on everything. And that's going to be good. That's going to be fine. That's going to be enjoyable for me because I love to argue with people, obviously, right? That's going to be great. We disagree on some of the nuance. We disagree on the implementation of Medicare for all. We disagree on what the top marginal percent, we disagree on capitalism. We disagree on how it should either be reformed or completely destroyed, right? We disagree on that. But you know what we agree on? Is that every single one of us need to hold the line and give them as much hell on this tax policy as we did on Obamacare. We have to. We have to shift gears. The last couple of weeks we've been talking about Obamacare and how it's going to hurt people, and now they've shifted gears. Here's the thing. They wanted to get rid of Obamacare. They wanted to repeal Obamacare, at least the versions before the Graham Cassidy bill, specifically to get rid of the increase, the 2.5% increase on people who made over, I believe it was 2.5% on people who made over $250,000 a year, to aid in creating the markets and the subsidies that made the Affordable Care Act work. So there was a tax increase for people who made over $250,000 a year inside of Obamacare, and Republicans, in the name of creating a better healthcare system, were really seeking to get a tax break for people who made over $250,000 a year. And since they could not get it in the repeal of Obamacare, they said, well, hell, let's just put down healthcare right now altogether, and let's just go for what we want, which is tax, quote unquote, reform. Clearly, it's not tax reform. They're selling these people. Oh, my God. This goes back full circle. Like, what the hell is wrong with Republicans? I mean, really? We have to actually stop and think about this for a minute. All jokes aside, these people who vote for individuals like Roy Moore out of Alabama, I think they are worse than Roy Moore himself. I think so. Because you have to be a certain level of ignorant to be able to continuously vote for people who are going to hurt you. And so when they're talking about tax reform, the amazing thing to me is that people actually buy into the misnomer of reform. Tax reform is not changing the number of tax brackets and flattening out from 7 to 3. That's not reform. That's not what makes taxation difficult. I can easily find which bracket I'm in. 7 brackets is no more than 3 brackets. Tax reform is not saying, oh, we're going to cut your filing process down to 1 index card. That doesn't simplify what's going on then maybe that simplifies you filing, but that doesn't change the structure underneath it. And then we have to argue about whether or not what components underneath. Oh, the tax code is so complicated. That doesn't get rid of the tax code. That just means the only thing that you're filling out is 1 postcard, and you still have to. The accountants are going to have to figure out how to get all the information, all those 1,500 pages of tax code, and then fit it on a postcard. That's all. It doesn't change the background. They're not getting rid of all the volumes of tax code, as if that is the problem. That's the thing. Listen. We have a complicated system because we are a big nation. And so somehow they've convinced their people that the problem is that the tax code is too complicated. And the best thing that we could possibly do for you middle class people is to simplify the tax code, flatten the brackets, help you so that you could file on a postcard. Never mind the fact that filing is pretty damn easy. Unless you're trying to do it by yourself. If you're trying to do it by yourself, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with you, right? Especially if you could pay $50 for one of these softwares who can file it for you and it's pretty accurate. Right. So they're trying to create a solution for a problem that doesn't really exist. But when people in their mind, they think about the IRS, they think of the boogeyman, and they think about filing for taxes, and they think of this great dread because of how complicated it is. You know what's complicated about it is that we have to file in the first place. And then we have to keep track of receipts if we're doing it that way, or we're going to take a standardized deduction, or that we just have to get our W-2s and our not W-2s, but our I can't even think of it, what, W-9s? You can tell I've been an independent contractor for a while. I'd fill out a W-2 for the first time in a long time. I've been an independent contractor for a long time. But anyway, I digress. It's the fact that we have to keep track of that. We have to get it all, put it in one place, and then decide whether or not we're going to go to, because listen, let's be real. We're all probably average income earners, so we're either going to H&R Block, or we got our cousin who's an accountant who's helping us out, or we're using some tax. So that's not the complicated part. The complicated part is that we actually have to take time out of our day working 2 jobs in order to figure out where we're going to get our taxes done. The fact that we have to do it in the first place. That's what's complicated. Now, some of you may actually have multiple businesses. I mean, I've a couple of businesses, right? And it is a little more complicated in the sense that it's more for us to gather paperwork and put it together and then take it to someone who's going to weave and sort through all the complications for us, right? So I go through all of this to say they're not solving the complicated part for us. They're saying, here are some token items that sound good. And we're going to call these token items reform. You're going to be able to fill out your taxes on on a postcard. That's reform. Get the hell out of here. And people fall for this? That's amazing to me. That's fascinating to me that people actually fall for this shit. They're going to say, oh, we're going to simplify your taxes. We're going to take your tax brackets down from 7 to 1 to 3, because somehow sifting through and trying to figure out how much you make and then looking at a chart of 7 choices and say, this is where I fall, because the vast majority of Americans have very simple taxes, 1040EZ. The vast majority of Americans don't own and don't have equity in anything. We don't have any stocks. We don't have any bonds. We don't have any rental income. The average American can fill out a 1040EZ, get their one. I still don't even know what it is because I haven't got one in a long time. Everything I get is a 1099. Damn it, the IRS is after me all the goddamn time. But anyway, I digress. But the vast majority of Americans, we don't make enough money to have anything but a very simplified 1040EZ. That's why it's there in the first place. It was like so many people were filling out a 1040 and leaving empty spaces. They're like, oh, we need to make something simpler for these poor motherfuckers. Excuse me. So they're convincing poor people and middle income earners, they're convincing you that this is somehow tax reform because now you get to fill out your taxes on a postcard. Send me a letter from Vegas. What is this? A postcard. That doesn't make my life easier. That doesn't make my life easier because that's not the complicated part of my life. The complicated part of my life is trying to figure out how the hell did I get stuck owing the government, but I ain't got no money at the end of the goddamn year. That's the complicated part. How the hell do I get stuck owing the government? Okay, all right, maybe you don't owe the government. How the hell do my refund check is only $100 this year? That's the complicated part. Here, I'm going to give you an example of something complicated I'm telling you, oh my goddamn, back when we first moved to Boston, we were so damn poor that all I could do was fill out, TurboTax. And we got to the end and I didn't even have any money to pay the damn bill. I wasn't getting a refund, so I couldn't use the refund to cover the expense. I think it was like $49. I didn't have a refund. I owe the government, so they couldn't take money. This is complicated. Right? How the hell am I going to pay TurboTax when I don't have any money in the goddamn bank, but yet I owe the government money? That's complicated. And he said, well, Ben, okay, now you're pointing out some things that Donald Trump actually addresses because he's going to, well, I think one of the things is he's going to allow the first $24,000 of your income to not be taxed. Well, okay, thanks. That's on the income, but you know what? That's not the only taxes that I pay out of my check. That's not why my check is drastically different. That's payroll taxes, right? That's Medicare. That's SSI that I have to pay. There's all these other things that come out of my check that income tax. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, but I didn't make enough to pay income tax in the first place. You know what I mean? So, great. So most people still don't make enough money to pay income tax in the first place. That's what's complicated. Trying to circumnavigate this American system with not a damn penny. So anyway, that's not my story this year. I don't know. I have to see. I have to talk to my accountant. Yeah, right. But back to the misnomer. I'm sorry. I'm just a little worked up and sleepy at the same time, if that makes sense. But the misnomer that this is tax reform, this isn't tax reform. This is, we're going to do some really cute, quaint little things so people could think that they've gotten reform, and in reality, we've just given tax breaks to the wealthiest people. We're going to say it's for small businesses when in reality the IRS definition of a small business includes the Koch brothers. This is how, I mean, think about it, man. How hard up, like, this is how they get you. You own a business. Your business may make $150,000 a year and you're the only individual, right? You're only one employee and you're a small business, but then none of these benefits that they're talking about on the news about small businesses applies to you because you don't meet the technical definition according to the IRS. But you know who does meet the technical definition of a small business according to the IRS? Koch Industries. And this is the game that's played on us. Now I can understand, and this is partly my job. It's part of the job of any of us who have these platforms is to take these things and break it down, because I can understand how some people could look at and not know that their business is not considered a small business according to the IRS, or even if it is considered a small business, it's out of the category that's going to get the benefits from Donald Trump's tax reform. I can see how that's deceptive because they're saying to you small business, and then they're actually talking about, to you and our perspective, ginormous businesses. So I get that. And this is not, I'm not going to slam on anyone who did not know that there is a technical definition of a small business. And then there's the language that the doublespeak that the Republican Party always use. I'm totally on board with breaking down the doublespeak for you and giving the translation at the drop of a dime. But what I'm not understanding and I don't get is when people can look at something as obvious as breaking down. Let's get rid of the estate tax. And think that that's something that's good for the average American. That I don't understand. I don't understand how you could believe that an estate tax that's only applied to people who actually can leave an inheritance. Well, there you go. There you go. Most Americans don't have anything to leave their children when they die. Most Americans, when they die, and I can't say most because I don't actually know the statistics, but I would venture to say a great deal of Americans, when they die, may not be able to pay for their final expenses if it was not for that $1 a month final insurance, life insurance that you get. I would venture to say that there's so many people who, if not for those cheap little life insurance policies, would die and not have, and they have to raise money on GoFundMe. So why do you have a good portion of America, and by good portion, the Republican Party, people who lean to the right, advocating on behalf of eliminating the estate tax when they don't have any money to leave their children in the first place? And we can talk about all the structural reasons. They want you to believe it's just because you don't know how to save money. But in actuality, when you need 90% of your income just to survive, good luck leaving an inheritance. But that's okay. We'll talk about the systemic reasons for poverty later. But right now, I just want to know why these people are so goddamn stupid. I'm sorry, guys. Like I said, I'm stupid. I'm sleepy. But I need to understand why they're so ignorant. Help me to understand why they don't understand that they don't have money to leave their children. Okay, if they do, let's say they do. Let's say they have $100,000 that they're going to leave their child. That money's not taxed in the first place. If there's a threshold, the estate tax only, I think it's over $10 million for a married couple. Okay, the death tax. You think you're going to get a death tax when in reality, you're not even in that income bracket, buddy. Not even remotely close. So here you are. The Republicans have been masters of this. I could summarize it right here, my friends. Republicans have mastered the art of getting poor people and middle class people to advocate on behalf of the wealthiest Americans as if they were advocating for themselves. That has been the masterstroke of conservatism over many years, at least the last 30 plus years. What's this, 2017? 37 years. 37 years. They've been at least that long. They've been convincing poor and middle income earners to advocate on behalf of the top 1% of 1% as if they were advocating for themselves. You got plumbers. You got the proverbial Joe the plumbers running around America talking about, I want to get rid of the estate tax because I want to make sure I leave my kids something and the government doesn't need it. And they don't call it the estate tax. Let me start that parody again. I want to get rid of the death tax. I don't want my children need their money. And I don't want the government putting their hands on me after I die. They get me while I'm living and they get me while I die. Listen, you big dummy. You leave your children $1 million. You're still not at the threshold where you're going to be taxed with a death tax. Now I'm going completely off memory. I do believe the threshold is $10 million for a married couple. That you, at that point, once you are able to leave as a married couple, $10 million to your next generation, then the government will tax you with an estate tax. I mean, come on. Who's leaving $10 million to their children? Most of us are leaving debt to our children, but we're advocating on behalf. And Donald Trump is using now this tax policy, Paul Ryan. This is the other thing, guys. I'm sorry. I'm just venting tonight. Maybe it was good I did this tonight because I don't know if I probably would have stopped and wanted to talk to everybody on the phone and I wouldn't have gotten this out. So maybe it's good I'm doing this in the podcast format. But these people look at you with a straight face. And they swear that what they're getting ready to do with this tax policy is simply a blessing for you. Paul Ryan, I mean, that is one sick... he's a sociopath. We know Donald Trump's a sociopath, but you know who's the serial killer in the bunch? Eddie Monster. Paul Ryan. He looks just like Eddie Monster. He's the serial killer. He is the sociopath in the bunch because he looks at you with his puppy dog, sad Eddie Monster ass face looking eyes. And he tells you this is just what's best for America. This is good for America. This is good for the average Americans. And lying doesn't cover it. There's a level of sincerity that he exudes. I call him disingenuous because I know what he's saying is a lie, but I get why people who want to believe him because he exudes a level of sincerity with his eyes and his words, when in reality, he is lying through his teeth. And he is speaking in doublespeak on behalf of a very small subset of the richest people in the world. You want to talk about a damn Illuminati? It ain't no Illuminati. You got the top 1% of 1% who have politicians in their pocket, and they have talented actors like Paul Ryan in their pockets such that they could get on a national stage and tell you that this is in your best interest when in actuality it is to your detriment. That is a skill set. That's an amazing skill set. And it's a skill set of a sociopath. And Paul Ryan is leading the bunch. Simply fascinating to me. And you know why they get rid of it? Here's another layer of it. And this is why I'm like, I guess I can come full circle. As crazy as today's episode, as wild as it has been, I'm coming full circle, believe it or not. Stick with me, guys. I know what I'm doing here. It wasn't on purpose, but it happens. Coming full circle. There's another element to it where Republicans, the voters now, not the politicians, the voters, some of them are being deceived. But you know what? This is why I said we have to stop and ask ourselves, what the hell is wrong with these people? They're a threat to national security. They're a threat to our economic stability. They're a threat to society, humanity, to the earth. They are a threat. You know why? Because save that small percentage that actually may be deceived, honestly and sincerely deceived, the rest of them don't care. Because they are so committed in their opposition to you and I that they are willing to know, they're willing to accept the fact that Paul Ryan and Donald Trump are lying to them. They're willing to accept the fact that they were going to lose their health care if Obamacare is repealed. They're willing to accept the fact that they might be one of the 43,000 people that die every year without the Affordable Care Act. They are willing to accept the fact that they're not going to get anything from this tax quote unquote reform, that this is actually going to help the Koch brothers. But you know what? They are so fanatical in their opposition to anything that's not conservatism, because they don't really know all of the divisions that are on our, they call us all communists. In reality, we have, anyway, I digress. You know what's going on our side of that. But they are so entrenched and so committed to their opposition to anything that's not conservatism that they're willing to accept the fact that they're being lied to just so that they can oppose people like you and me. And that is how you get a Roy Moore. At first I called him Roy Cooper. Then I was going to say Roy Blunt. How the hell are all these Roys? Roy Moore in Alabama. They would elect a man who will make homosexuality, or would like to make homosexuality illegal, not marriage. And I'm using homosexuality as the word instead of gay, because that's the language. He wants to make homosexuality, homosexual conduct illegal in Alabama specifically. But now he's going to the U.S. Senate. But they will vote for him knowing good and goddamn well their cousin, their nephew, their daughter, nobody else, they themselves are probably gay. Possibly. Whatever. But the point is that they are willing to bring harm, sadistic. That's really what it is. They are willing to bring harm to themselves in order to be able to say, I told you so, as if life has become one big social media political argument, and all that matters is for them to win that political argument, even if it means in real life losing health care. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze them, even though I just psychoanalyzed the shit out of them. But I will say, this is why, oh man, this is, I love it when a plan comes together. I didn't really plan this episode, but I love it when it comes back to the top. This is why it's so important for people like me, a socialist. I'm just a tad bit more socialist than Bernie Sanders, but I guess you could say I'm a democratic socialist. That's why it's important for people like me to be willing to work with people, the good people. I love them. I've worked with them for like 2 months now, and they're really becoming my family. But neoliberals that are there, some people who don't know, some of them know politics from different perspectives. Some don't know the economics of it, and I explain it to them, and I'm converting them. Shit, that's the good thing about it. I'm converting. I'm getting some converts. But that's why. Let me finish my thought. Bear with me. That's why it's important for people like me to work with the neoliberals in this case. And the reason why is because we are actually fighting against a group of people who are so psychotic with their opposition that it does not matter if they will elect people who they know are lying to them, people who are going to implement policies to hurt them, because all that matters to them is that they can turn around to you and say, ha, 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 we won. I'm not going to draw the false equivalence here and say that it's the same on both sides. I would just say that I've seen it on both sides, and it completely drives the Republican Party. You will find it on the Democratic Party side. Absolutely, you will. But you will not find it to the extent where people will knowingly, at least Democrats have some, at least we got one thing figured out. We may not understand why we need to become even more progressive with our tax policy, but at least people over here who are not Republicans understand that there is absolutely no reason on God's green earth or under the, whatever. I don't have a pithy way of saying a non-religious version of God's green earth. I tried. I failed. But anyway, there is no reason on this side of Darwin's fish. I give up. I'm sorry. I give up. Here's my sentence with no crazy phrases before it. There's no reason. We who are not Republicans, as broad of a spectrum as we are, as divided as we are, as much as infighting as we have, as much as we can't stand each other, quite frankly, the reality of it is we understand that there's absolutely no reason for us to take a situation that has created so much income inequality, has created such a wealth disparity, that has literally created Charles Dickens' best of times and worst of times, where you have so much wealth and you have so much poverty. There's absolutely no reason why we should create a tax code that's going to further exacerbate that. We may not agree on anything else, but damn it, we agree on that there should not be 1 cent for the top 1%. Not a dime. And I will see you all tomorrow.